I want to talk about race and crime and poverty and the stuff. I want to talk about the stuff that everybody is talking around, and particularly in the corporate media is not talking about, except for the right-wingers, and they're talking about it in a way that is disingenuous and untrue. I brought this up yesterday. I want to expand on it a little bit today. And that is, for example, I didn't see Bill O'Reilly's rant last night. Shano and Danielle were telling me about it when I came in today, that, he just kind of went off on Detroit going bankrupt. And, this is what happens when you put unions and Democrats in charge of a city. This is the predictable thing. This is the meme that all the right-wingers are doing right now. And the subtext to it, because Detroit is 85% African American, it's on a percentage basis, racially, it is the most African American major city in the United States. And so the right wingers say, so therefore, of course, it's going to go bankrupt. Juxtapose that with Trayvon Martin and some of the hate mail that I'm getting. Hey, it was a black guy in a hoodie. What do you expect, right? This sort of racial stereotyping. Juxtapose that with people trying to justify George Zimmerman going after Trayvon Martin because, after all, everybody knows there's all this so-called black-on-black crime, and black people are more likely to commit crimes in America. Quack, 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 quack. Now, here's the reality. The right wing, the subtext of the right wing message is an essentially racist message, which is that black people can't run a city, black people can't run their own lives, black people can't be economically successful in the United States. African Americans, it's the bell curve. There's something wrong with them. That's the subtext to the right wing message, and they're all speaking in code, and they're all hearing it. Everybody who hears a right-winger say this understands what's being said. At least all the right-wingers do. And I think probably most left-wingers have figured it out long ago. So how do you explain it? How do you explain the fact that black men are statistically the most likely population in the United States to be murdered? It's true. Or that black people, African Americans, are more likely to commit crimes against other African Americans than against white people, and African Americans are more likely to be the victims of crime than white people. How do you explain that? You know the right wing's answer. It's the bell curve answer. It's the racist answer. What I'm not hearing is anybody pushing back on that. I mean, this was a conversation I thought we had back in the 60s. When the right-wingers were pushing back on LBJ's Great Society, and he said, no, we're going to do this, and here's why. We had some very, very, very loud and clear and crystal clear conversations about race in the 1960s. I was there, I remember. So let me repeat some of this stuff for you. In the 1840s and 1845 to 1848, you had this, as I recall, you had this giant famine in Ireland, because the British told the Irish that all the wheat that they grew in Ireland had to be exported to Britain, because Ireland was a colony of Great Britain. The British told the Irish, you have to export the wheat. So the only thing you can't eat any of it. You can't eat bread. That's why so many Irish immigrants, that's why so many people in Australia have Irish roots. Because they were arrested literally stealing bread or for eating bread. So they had to eat potatoes, and there was this blight on the potatoes. There was a fungus that took the potatoes out, and they didn't have enough to eat, and 1 million people died of starvation in Ireland at the same time that Ireland was exporting wheat to England. More than enough wheat to feed all the people in Ireland. This was in the 1840s. So the Irish said, to hell with this, I'm getting out of here. Or many of them did. And they immigrated to the United States. They came to the United States and they talked differently. This is around the era of the Civil War and in the decade or two after the Civil War. And they talked differently. They were easy to identify. You knew who the Irish were. You could sort of see by how they looked, but you could definitely tell once they opened their mouths. And so the WASPs, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, said, hey, cheap labor. Keep these people down. And Irish crime in the United States in the mid-19th century, mid to late 19th century, was so epidemic that there were books being written about the Irish gene and speculation that people with red hair were predisposed to crime because there were more redheads in Ireland, and there must be a genetic basis for this. 2 generations later, when the accent was completely gone and the Irish had largely integrated themselves with other white people, and outside of Boston there were not that many Irish ghettos, the Irish had become part of the American middle class because you couldn't tell that they were those people. The same thing happened with Italians in the 1890s who had a mass immigration into the United States, and you had this huge explosion of Italian crime, particularly on the East Coast, and from the 1890s until the 1930s. They created the mafia because they were being kept down. Eventually, the Italians assimilated because, hey, white people, and they lost their accents. Now come along. Now here are African Americans. Now, African Americans have been here a lot longer than either the Irish or the Italians, but they can't assimilate into white culture by looking like they're white. I mean, they can try. They can wear a suit and tie and say, I'm wearing the uniform of white culture, but they can't change their skin color. So the kind of racist oppression that the white power structure in the United States applied to the Irish immigrants and to the Italian immigrants, and also to the Chinese immigrants in the 1880s, has been relentlessly applied to African Americans all this time. Ever since the Civil War, ever since Reconstruction, ever since Plessy versus Ferguson and Separate but Equal, ever since Brown v. Board. You can look at all these milestones of African Americans having to go to law over and over and over again to get rights that the Irish didn't have to go to law to get once they assimilated. The Italians didn't have to go to law to get once nobody could tell that they were Italian because they'd lost their accent because their skin was white. So the consequence of this racist oppression is poverty. And the consequence of poverty is crime. Right? Why did all those Irish get arrested and shipped off to Australia? And people are thinking that poverty equals race. It doesn't.